D&D tea time. It's now time for dessert. All right, everyone, roll for initiative.
17?
Not me this time.
17! Alright, so my opinion on character backgrounds is that I feel like, again, I get this little piece of something, like a little bit of something here or there, but I don't try to flesh it out too much because I want to keep it nice and open so that my character can grow and develop as we play. So,
I guess this is my most recent character is the first one I've really created that had more of a background. I guess because it's only my second campaign with D&D, and I spent more time with this character's background because I don't know if I'll do this every time, but I think it really made a difference with this character as far as giving him depth and giving him a drive. And like even the rest of the characters in our party don't all know his background and everything, but it motivates him and it motivates his decisions, and it really helps me know when I'm guiding him in the right direction, when I'm truly playing Ulfgar versus when I'm just controlling a character, but I'm really playing him. And I think the more extensive background was more necessary for that, so that I can really like get into his character and get into his mindset and what he's going to do and like what drives him specifically. Because everyone, even to all of us in normal life, we all have different motivations and different driving forces that push us in different directions and are different choices that we make. And so I think that having that background for him and spending some more time I think what I did was I just like would add a piece and be like, oh no, that doesn't work.
That doesn't work. Take it out.
Add something else. And I think I started by looking at some of the tables and rolling a few of them and seeing if, okay, well, let me add that to it. See how I feel. No, that doesn't feel authentic. That doesn't feel like a part of him. And then I think what I ended up settling with was I would roll for something and then I would tweak it to fit more along with what I was envisioning and what I was feeling for him.
Yeah. I feel like I've tried to make my characters with very different backgrounds, specifically to keep from slipping into bad habits or like bad old characters.
I was gonna say, how do you do that? Because I struggle with consistency or like trying to create like a genuine character that's not basically the last one I made.
You go with something completely different. Because it would be very easy. I loved playing Tooks, and it was so much fun, and it would be, if I had made a character that was similar to her, I would have been slipping back into her mannerisms and her decision-making and all that kind of very easily.
Yeah.
I agree with that because I did the same thing. And honestly, our two characters in our last campaign, Tooks and Ice, were throughout the campaign just became the best of friends. And Ice looked at Tooks like his little sister, and that was his family. And he didn't have any family left at that point. And he, and Tooks was that for him. And now in this new campaign, Ulfgar doesn't even like Nora.
I know! It's driving me nuts.
I
liked that, like, brother-sister relationship with Brad.
Yeah, we still have that, and yet our characters, it's so different this time around.
So different.
Yeah, and with that campaign, same thing happened with mine. Like Celosia in that other campaign was the parent. Like she was the adult of the group. And now I went completely different. Like I'm the youngest, like my character's the youngest in the group. However, she's had some of the most tragic life experience with Celosia. Yes, she lost her father when she was 16, but my new character, Miss, lost her entire culture, not just her parents.
That's
right?
interesting.
Complete culture at like the age of 11. And so that's really, she's an orphan. She's, she doesn't know how to trust people now, right? She's had to make her own way. And so it's very different in this party where Celosia is so used to being the adult, kind of, I'm not going to call her like the leader of the party, but she kept the group kind of on task a lot of the time.
She was also the talker, so
She was
anytime we
talker.
had to deal with anything, it was like, yes? I don't know, what would you say?
And so in this campaign, Miss tries not to talk at all if she can help it. And she just likes to sit back and be in the corner and watch. And it's a very different dynamic. But, in regards to backgrounds, I like that like I mentioned before, I like the randomization, but it's got to make sense for the character. If I've rolled that they have a tragic back, like with Mist, she has lost all of her culture, all of her, her family, and if I were to roll something about, but your best friend, your friends, your party is your, best friends, I'm like, I don't think that would make sense. It doesn't
Right.
make sense because she doesn't trust easily, right?
Yeah.
So.
You guys are a lot better than me at that. I have zero way of, I just can't hold it together. Like, anytime I try to make a character, it always turns into the same thing. I know I said that earlier, but it really is true. I've had a character, it was in Cyberpunk. I tried to give it a little bit of a background. I was like, kind of like what you do. I try to give it like I was like, this is my idea here, the John Cena thing. Didn't work out.
But that's also, that's also personal choice, though. It's not that every character if you're playing something that you truly love and you truly enjoy, and that's how you enjoy playing the game, then there's nothing wrong with playing the same character again.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, that's you. But it's not boring, it's your style, because they're going to make different choices throughout the game.
Right.
And they're going to do different things because outside factors. So they're going to grow and they'll shape into their own character eventually. So it doesn't really matter if you don't, go in with the outset of having a totally different character or you're concerned about that. Because throughout the actions and the things that happen from external factors, they're going to change and be at least slightly different. Just as, two siblings grow up in the exact same house.
That's true, yeah.
And, my brother and I could not be more different from one another.
Yeah.
So I don't think it makes you boring or anything. I think it's just what you really like, and that's just what you gravitate towards.
Yeah, and I'm gonna speak as just having played lots of RPGs. The majority of my characters, this is a personal choice. It has nothing to do with my characters.
Mm-hmm.
There's an item I always buy. I always buy in my starting kit. Doesn't matter what character I'm playing. Is sealing wax. I always buy sealing wax. I have sealing wax.
How often do you use that?
You'd be surprised because it's the creativeness and of course your DM. Because sealing wax, yes, you can use it to seal letters like it's meant to be, but you can also use it to seal jars. You can use it to plug your ears, plug your nose. Having to do that, but it's really how creative you are with the object. And I just for some reason I always have, sealing wax because of that need. Some of my character classes, I always have a string and a bell. It's usually a rogue class, but it's because that's an instant alarm.
Right.
But I've also used it to determine how deep a well is, right? It's really so the imagination is.
Mine is rope.
Is there?
I was about to say,
Everyone should have rope. Everyone should have rope.
Everyone should always have rope, but I will say that me and Christina definitely make sure that we have plenty of rope.
It came up many, many times in our first campaign together.
Yeah.
I will say it also.
What do you mean you don't have rope?
More than once, it actually saved Ice's life. He would not have survived over that lava bridge.
Yep.
Yeah.
When we were fighting the gunslinger or the wand slinger, yeah. And Ice would not have survived that if it wasn't for the rope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
But going back about backgrounds, there's a difference between backgrounds and backstory.
Yeah.
And so and it really depends on the gaming system too. D&D 5th edition uses something called backgrounds that gives you flavor of where your character comes from, and it gives you an extra ability or extra knowledge. So, for instance, my paladin, She has the criminal investigator, like the cop background. She's a paladin, but she has a cop background.
Right.
And so, that's going to color how, she's neutral good, but she's still thinks in terms of the law, which lines up with the paladin. So it kind of gives her, instead of just being all about religion and about her god, that it's actually a practical skill, a practical way of why it was so natural for her to become a paladin. It's because she already had that law, looking at what's right, doing the investigation, that sort of thing.
I guess earlier I was talking more about my character's backstory and how I created his backstory versus background. I do like looking through the different background choices and seeing what what you can go with. I can't remember exactly what the choice was called that I made this time, but it was inheritance, and that was the choice that when I was going through the backgrounds, that's actually how I came up with my character's backstory, was through that background. It popped in my idea. I was like, okay, an inheritance. What did he inherit? What was this thing? And then that was, and no one in our campaign this isn't something that's ever come up or anything, but my character has a ring on, and it's his familial signet ring. And this is to show that he is the rightful heir to to Greywall, which is why he hates Zorschlik so much, and why he doesn't like mind flayers at all in general.
I'm about to say, who's Zorschlik?
Zorschlik, he was a mind flayer that owns my family's castle and the surrounding lands.
I do have a question for you guys. Would you guys consider Dead by Daylight an RPG, or no?
I don't think I'm familiar with that.
I'm not either, actually.
Okay. So it's like basically like a horror game, and
Okay.
so one person plays the enemy basically, and they're like a monster, and they're trying to kill everyone else. The game you're trying to escape. So, but they give a lot of characters, and there's backgrounds to all the characters, and they all come with a special skill set. I used to always choose characters that could basically wiggle themselves out of getting caught or being killed. But then I found this one character, and I really didn't care for her because she was so weak. But she was fast at running, and I was just like, I'm never going to be able to win with this girl. I killed it.
Yeah.
I was able to escape very quickly and get everyone out at the same time, but it was just, it's different, so I don't know.
Kind of a background.
Yeah, because I tried something different, and it actually worked out in my favor the first time I tried her, because I usually suck at escape.
No, that's like I was telling how I tend to do sniper characters within video games is one of the times when I was playing Fallout 4, and I switched the character to where it was like full on melee, didn't do any sniping, but it changes the gameplay, right? It makes 100%. It's a different gameplay, and I chose, some of the storyline items completely different than what I would ever normally have chosen, which influences how everyone else sees you, right? It influences your storyline. So I think in that case, choosing the skills where you put in the strengths within the character acts as a backstory for, in a lot of ways, because you do choose some of that in the very beginning too. Sure, it's a little more. It's not as what's the word when you have lots of choices.
Oh my god.
It's more limited.
Diverse.
Yes, it doesn't have as many diverse in regards to personality, but because you're putting points and you're growing skills. There was one character I put like everything in the stealth, like the stealth tree on Fallout, so that I could just like walk in places sometimes and just decimate it. But I couldn't carry anything to save my life, right? And so in those sorts of games, I think the background can influence you, but it's not as strong as your skill choices.
That makes sense.
So I've never really cared for the personality that comes with the character or the the backstory behind them, but definitely the background. Like if I can get more stamina points or something like that, I would always go for those types of characters.
Yeah, I did like with creating the different characters in D&D and creating the character sheets and stuff on D&D Beyond, that going through and they have just such a myriad of background options. So I mean, I feel like I've read through them all at least once, and I couldn't even remember half of them if I were to have to start writing them down now.
Oh,
But I'm sure you could write down.
No. I'm like, this is how much of a D&D guy. Is like, I had this idea for my little halfling rogue, and I wanted to make a miniature Indiana Jones. That's what I wanted, and I'm like, how? So I looked at the backgrounds, and I searched backgrounds, and there's this archaeologist background, but you get some backgrounds come from certain campaigns.
Right.
So I went and bought the campaign Tomb of Annihilation just so I could have the archaeologist background.
The archaeologist background.
So then I could just like explain how he knows so much about history being a rogue is because he's an archaeologist.
I think it fits. Yeah, but so I mean, in our first campaign with Ice, I took and used the military background. So he had fought in the military, he had fought in the previous war and everything, and so it kind of, I think the background, having a starting point like they provide in the D&D setup is really useful for a newer player, especially because it gives you, when you're presented with a million choices, it's like you're presented with no choices, because you're faced with decision paralysis, or at least me personally, I was.
Analysis
Paralysis, and I'm a very analytical person in general, and so I froze, and I had no idea. All of a sudden, I've got like a few days to get this character set up before my very first session. I've never done this before. Everybody I'm playing with has been doing this for so many years, except for Christina was fairly new at the time.
I was finally happy to not be the youngest player.
Not being the newest, but everyone else is, 20 plus years of experience, and I'm just like feeling so overwhelmed about, I don't want to just screw this whole thing up. And so I really liked that there was a background that could say, okay, this at least, here's a little paragraph that you can pick and choose pieces from.
Yeah.
And so it gave me a starting off point to really help me feel more comfortable in building something.
Oh, and custom. Well, again, I know because we play a lot of D&D 5th edition. The fact that you can create a custom background. So if there's like a background that you like part of the flavor, but it doesn't make any sense for the other part, you can go, I want to base this new background off of this, but I want it to have the stats of this or the benefits of that. So there's even more variety than what's there. Now, after you talk backgrounds, let's talk about backstory, because we started to talk backstory, and I'm going to start off by addressing it not as a player but as a DM.
Okay.
I'm a newer DM, and as a player, I didn't tend to. I had a little bit of backstory, but I try not to. My characters are more fluid earlier on, right? Because when we talked to experience, as a DM, I really want a background, but there are some players that would create like a report of their backstory, and it kind of paints them in a corner. So I think, speaking as a DM, I would rather you have a more open backstory that I call it Velcro. It allows me as the DM to go, oh, I can latch onto this part of your backstory and bring it into the game. But if you created in your backstory that you are the princess of the 15th dimension and that you are the only one that will rule, but now you're over here in Faerun, I can't.
What do I do with that?
What do I do with that? You've already created this whole other world, and that's not going to be easy to tie in, right?
Right.
And so I think as both a DM and as a player, I don't want so much of a backstory that I can't change, like I don't evolve, or what if I don't give you that you become the reigning queen as the DM? Are you going to now be upset?
Right.
Because I didn't take your backstory into consideration. so that's my opinion on backstory. I think it's good. A paragraph is probably enough. Key points.
I will tell you.
Overkill.
So we played with somebody who, your husband. The first campaign I did, he had this like multi-page backstory, and it was fascinating. And as a brand new player, I was like, oh my god, I cannot come up with that for my character.
Oh my god, I completely understand where you're coming from, and that was part of my analysis paralysis. Is that I looked at Travis's stuff, I looked at your stuff, I looked at Christina's stuff, I talked with Al, and I'm like, holy crap, how do I come up with something like this? Because I looked at Travis's and I was like,
It was
man,
so
I
good.
can't even do.
It was so good.
But you had to look at the character he was playing within the confines of the game. He was playing an evil character.
Right, and so he needed more specificity.
Right, because it's like he needed to give the DM a little bit more information for what his goals were. But
yeah, that was hard. But I will say that I do agree with you as far as not that I didn't enjoy Travis's backstory, because it was really good and it was fascinating. But for me personally, I do like the shorter. I feel like I now at this point have to have a backstory so that I can feel the character, like I was talking about earlier. But I don't want to be so specific that I eventually paint myself into a corner and now I can't grow from choices or change and move into a new direction.
Right.
Because if you're too overly specific and you are, a dwarf that has lived for 400 years in this one very specific manner and you have never changed, and this is... Well, you sure as hell aren't changing now.
Why are you joining an adventuring party?
What? That doesn't fit, you know?
I was in a short campaign, and one of the other players, I loved what she did with the backstory for her character. She built a turtle. It's a turtle race. But she built, we'll say, a grandpa. She built an old turtle who had already lived his life as a father, as a grandfather. He'd lost his spouse a few years before, and he was now in a point in his life that he was retired, we'll say, and his retirement was to go travel, and that's what he did.
You went to Florida?
No, he traveled.
He was one of those cruise boat turtles.
Right, but that's what she built, and so that's an interesting backstory because it gives that rich. They've already had a life. You can play with this life, but didn't paint the character into that corner that the DM. Why would they be traveling?
Right.
I
actually considered making a grandmotherly character like that was like a gardener but was like bored and ready to kick some ass.
Well,
and her weapon, a spade.
Celosia wasn't an adventurer.
Yeah.
Right.
My character in the game was not an adventurer. She was a city girl. She's in a metropolitan city. The first time that they're like, let's go outside of the big city, she's like, do we have to? Right? Because she's not an adventurer. And so she evolved. She left. She met, her future spouse and,
and
love of her life, right?
Yeah.
And she brought the lap of luxury everywhere with us.
Because her important thing was, I need a bed. That was it.
That's nice, though.
She needed a bed. So by the time we left the city, she got this spell called Galder's Tower. She could make sure she had a bed, had a place for us to park the wagon. Everyone had a bath. Apparently, everyone wanted a bathroom. She was like, I can go piss in the. I'm not that fine, but everybody else wanted that
We
bath.
all wanted a bathroom.
But that was her goal, and that's what she prepared to go out on adventuring to make sure she had a bed.
So did that help the rest of the team or no?
Oh yeah. I mean, she didn't do it just for herself.
That would be funny.
She's good, She had a bedroom to herself.
Yeah.
She did. She
But-
always made an observatory on the top portion too, so my character would always sleep in the observatory. So
Yeah.
no bed. But like
I would take it.
but I would use the telescope to not only look at the sky but to like look around it.
Around us. Our DM just
She became
loved
a
when we used that thing.
Yeah.
But it actually worked out in our favor at one point when like we needed to know when the moon became a certain point. I was like, I've been watching the sky.
Yeah.
I know this.
Yeah, and she could, that particular spell was she could change what rooms were there. So like one time she would have a library, a study,
Yes.
so that we could actually do notes.
Mhm.
But we always had a bathroom and her bedroom.
Those were the consistencies.
That was consistent. Everything else, it was just. I'm just thinking about it. Like, yep.
Thinking back, I just remember because I remember when we first brought up the bathroom discussion at one point. I was thinking, you know, well, Ice, he was in the military. He's not worried about having a place to sleep. He often slept in the observatory with Tooks,
Right.
but he had a penchant for, you know, he liked bubble baths, and that's why he was. That's why he liked that.
So
That's why he liked having that bathroom.
So when they gave her grief for having the spell, they were the ones that turned out
Needing it the most.
needing
we
the
enjoyed it. I will say, like, I saw something at one point that was a meme about, like, oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry, a woman giving birth. Oh, ma'am, I'm so sorry, it's a rogue. And, like, pulls out the dagger. Oh, my God. Like, every rogue, their parents are dead. Like that.
He's gonna kill them all.
It's not just rogues though. There's actually a commonality that for some reason people don't just become adventurers because they want to be. They
Because
come
they have
from
a nice,
happy
stable
homes.
life.
Right. They have to say, well, and there's actually on YouTube someone went through, you know, top 10 non-tragic backstories that you can have. And I'd like to say, for the most part, none of my characters have tragic backstories. Unless
I
it's,
have to disagree with that.
no, unless I roll.
Oh, okay.
Like I said,
Lost
they
her
ex-
entire culture.
that's the
Entire culture
exception.
at 11, not tragic at all.
Well, like I said, that's the unique one.
Right.
That was her plan because, but the only reason is because that's where she decided to be from.
Okay.
And anyone that decides that country as their back, like where they're from, they're going to have that same
Because it's
story.
part of the lore.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
part of the world lore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny is I didn't do this intentionally, but in the Celosia game, her future husband also had that same backstory. He's from that same world, and he like said, "I don't care. I'm going to assimilate to everybody, everything else, right?" And my character Mist is just the opposite. Anyone that's assimilated did not hold on to the culture. She's like, I hate them.
Traitor!
And I didn't do it on purpose. It just
Right.
happened that
But see, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is you have the backstory and the character grows out of that.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is really fun, is giving your character enough room to breathe and grow and I feel like exactly, and be a real, be a real character. And I think that's what I love the most, is that when I get to, we come over our game is every other Tuesday night, and I get to sit down and I break out, my laptop and my dice, and I have my character sheet pulled up, and I'm like, all right, Brad's going away for a couple hours. Now I'm Wolfgar, and I'm gonna be this, grouchy, surly Durgar that if you're in the way, he might just blast you out of the way because it was more expedient.
Okay, so we were talking about with Ulfgar, that you actually did some randomization. Are there any specific tools that you used?
So, for me, I just went through D&D Beyond's character creation, and I used that because, one, I needed to create a character in specifically for D&D, but I liked going through their character creation because oftentimes, if I pair that up with Xanthar's Guide to Everything, and it gives me a lot of different options, and I can say, okay, well, I don't think this table necessarily I really liked any of the choices. Because I'll use the different tables so that I can roll and add a little bit of randomization to it. And that's kind of the way I like to go. And then or I'll see a table, I'm like, nothing on that appeals to me at all or appeals to my character. I don't think it would fit with him. And so I'm like, well, we're skipping that. We're not doing any of those. And then I go looking somewhere else or looking for a different like table that I can kind of roll from, because I do like that act of randomization to see the character almost spring forth from nothingness, and to see who they're going to grow and who I get to pretend to be, who I get to play as. Because like I said, when we sit down for our game, I get to peel back Brad and live out a different aspect of my personality, of who I could be if I chose to be different than, who I am.
Short and,
Yeah, if I go short and even hairy. I don't know. I think I have the dwarf beard almost down. So
You're working on it.
thank you for watching this episode of RPG Tea Time.
What are your answers to today's questions? Let us know in the comments.
Please like and subscribe to our channel.
And remember to hit the bell to be notified of new videos. Happy home brewing!
All I can picture is Brad doing like and subscribe. I told you to.
I might use that.